All right, welcome back to the VWIDTalk Podcast. We are your hosts, Jan and Wes. And today we want to talk about winter driving, how it affects things like range. And Jan took one for the team here and actually took his car on a ski trip. And I love that picture. That's more than a half a meter of snow there, about 25 inches.
Yes, it was 25 inches over 2 days. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we want to see the impact of a cold weather and snow and elevation on your range, on your power, and how well this drives. So let's go look at, how is the range impacted? What should you do charging wise? And what does it do to your max power? And driving, does it drive any differently in winter? This is, Jan you took screenshots of your GOM. And for those of us that are not,
guess-o-meter. Right?
Yeah, guess-o-meter. So we call it that on purpose, mostly in the EV community, because the car is trying to guess how many miles of range you have based on your recent driving history. And so you look here at the first screenshot, Jan is charged to 100% to prepare for this trip. And based on his recent driving, it thinks you've got 199 miles of range because your recent consumption was only, you get 3 miles per kilowatt hour. But you knew better because you knew you were going to drive it up a mountain with 4,000 feet of elevation.
Yes.
So the second shot here is after driving, halfway, you drove to your destination, 75 miles.
Yeah, so 75 miles driven. And maybe you would think, oh, I won't get it back. I won't get back because now I have only 44%
You used over half of your battery, 56% to get there.
6%, yes.
And it thinks you've only got 64 miles left. So it thinks you used 136 miles, 135 miles of range to go what it thought was 199, right?
Yes. And also look at how the consumption has dropped. The consumption has dropped to 2 miles per kilowatt hour. But this is the first learning. This is the first trick of driving uphill. Doesn't matter if you drive uphill in summer or winter, but the fact is that when you're driving downhill, you will be able to recuperate a lot of the energy driving uphill. So for example, if that uphill costs you 15% up, then downhill it may be a couple of percentage points, or maybe you can even recharge, you can even gain some percentage points. Like how much, it really depends on how steep it is and how cold it is outside. Because of course, when you're driving back, you won't be able to recuperate everything because you will burn part of it for heating the cabin and for heating the battery. But we'll show that in a minute.
Wow, okay. And the last slide there, you can see when you actually got back, you did better than they thought because, again, you knew you were going downhill and you came back with 12% left and 22 miles of range left on the guess-o-meter.
Yep.
So, a total of 147 miles plus 22 miles left.
170 compared to 200, so 30 mile difference, so 15-ish% difference.
But what's interesting is it took you 56% of your battery to get there, and only, what's the difference there? Only 32 to get back.
That's almost a half, right? So when you think about it logically, it does not make sense because, especially here, the car was parked for 2 days. It was below freezing, so it was cold. So like the battery, the car was completely on like -3 centigrades /28 Fahrenheit. Right. So when you think about it, it really doesn't make sense that you even heated the car and you still were able to drive back. But yes, that's how the uphill and downhill
that's
driving
physics
works.
For you, right? And you had said earlier, Jan, that it might take as much as 50% more energy in kilowatt hours to overcome, if you have to overcome 4,000 feet of elevation change.
Yep.
Instead of maybe 15 kilowatt hours to get there, it might take you 22. It might take you 50% more.
Exactly.
So it's different than just driving flat.
Yeah.
So what's next? So you did.
Here's some summary. So for the cold weather, we know we did some episode about EV consumption, and we know that there's a large portion of energy that you extract from the battery is for heating the cabin, but also heating battery. We'll talk about that. Overcoming elevation, we've talked about it. That if you drive up, you may need more power. You will need more power than when you drive straight.
Yeah.
When the battery is around freezing temperature, it outputs less power because it has higher internal resistance, and the car protects the battery because it cannot drop below certain voltage. So the max power that your car can output is lower. And one kind of make sense type of a thing is that if you drive up to a resort, doesn't matter if it's winter or summer, and then you drive down, don't charge at 200% on top, because then you wouldn't have enough buffer to store the energy that you recuperate from going downhill.
And it'll have to be dissipated somehow else, like using your brakes or running the heater or something.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
And you don't want to burn it on your brakes, right? You want to
and the longer
store it
you're
back in the battery.
exactly. So your longer your downhill drive is, the less high you want to charge it. Maybe keep it below 85% or something, depending on how long your trip is.
Yep.
So this is interesting. This is you showing how the car, and this is something I didn't know until Jan told me this a little bit ago. The left bar, the green bar, shows how much energy you can recuperate if you're currently recuperating, and the right hand bar, the blue bar, shows how much power you have available. And so there's two different thicknesses, Jan. What does that mean?
Yep. So the thin thickness, that's the maximum power that the car can output. So you see that my car was able to output only at max 0.5% of the total power. And then because I was driving while this photo was taken, then you see that this is the actual consumption. So you know that thicker bar, right? When you press the accelerator pedal, then you see that bar extending. But in my case, the bar wouldn't extend beyond half of it because the battery was around freezing. And you also see that there was roughly 1.3 kilowatts taken from the battery to heat the battery. So the battery heater was using 1.3 kilowatts at this point. It initially was using 2 kilowatts. And plus also the cabin heater was using around 3 kilowatts. So there is some, of course, energy that you need to take out from.
And that is the car scanner app you're showing us a shot up there. And what's interesting is that this was not energy being used to heat the battery up to optimal fast charging temperature. Correct. This is just to heat it up to regular operating temperature, so it doesn't get damaged. And you can see
what I observed, it heated up above freezing, and then the heater turned off.
Okay, you can see right above there that you were recuperating coming downhill 2.5 kilowatts of energy just by coming downhill and using regenerative braking. And then you used half of that, 1.3 kilowatts, to keep the battery warm, in addition to the energy you're using to heat your cabin and keep your human self warm.
Exactly.
So this is all interesting. I feel it's really interesting if you go back to the other right where you are there, that your power is limited to 50%. But also your regenerative charging is limited to only about 75% of what it would be normally. So I guess the key takeaway here, though, is to be careful. If you're thinking of overtaking someone, your car is not going to have the power that you're used to if you put the accelerator all the way to the floor. But it shouldn't make a difference for normal driving. It's just
you just don't feel it during normal driving. But of course, when you need that emergency power, it's not there.
Yeah. That's a good tip. Okay.
All right. So winter driving conditions in an EV, it's just a car as itself, as any other car. It doesn't defy physics. It cannot defy physics, of course. It's maybe a little heavier than comparable cars. What I was really amazed that the flakes, the snowflakes, were kind of floating across the windshield. Which was surprising. So you see that I don't have windshield wipers, and the snowflakes are just flowing around.
It looks like those videos you see of a car in a wind tunnel at a testing facility or something. It's really neat.
Oh yes, almost. But it felt really stable, even in like fully snow covered roads. I felt pretty good. I did engage the traction mode because I have a 4-wheel drive, so there is a traction mode that I've engaged. And then when it starts snowing, the front radar gets covered and it stops working.
Okay, so the icon I'm seeing in the top left there, that's the traction mode icon.
This is the traction mode, yes.
Traction mode, okay. I'm seeing mountains in the background.
Yes, mountains,
okay, so there's a lot of errors there.
Yes.
What is that all about? Is that what you were talking about, the radar?
Yes, I know. So when it snows and the snow gets trapped on the front bumper, then it shields the front radar, and your front radar does not see well ahead. And so what the car does, it kind of throws a bunch of errors, and like triangle, why there are two triangles. So VW, if you're listening, like why does it have to be this intimidating? I understand that there are some regulations, but I want to focus on driving, not like on blinking dash, right?
Yeah.
So what these symbols are saying is that the travel assist doesn't work and the emergency braking doesn't work.
That's what the icon on the left there is, the one where the road is. That's saying emergency braking is not available. Okay, it'd be nice if it said it in text somewhere. But you said
I think there was a like a toast on the top that kind of disappeared then.
Okay, but there wasn't this. You said this was caused by the radar. There wasn't that much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not that
surprisingly no. So I pulled over and the radar is right here, right below the VW logo. It's on a different spot on the ID bus. It's lower in the bumper, so maybe ID bus doesn't have these types of problems. And so when you look at it, it's only like roughly 5 millimeters of like slush or ice that was on it. And so as soon as you clean it, I also clean the ice from the logo, because it would just then melt and kind of slide down, right? So I cleaned it and it worked for another like 5-10 minutes until it didn't again.
Right, of course. Well, I was telling you earlier, though, that's why on trips like this, I strap one of my kids to the hood, and you use tie downs, so they're secure, and they just use one of those brushes to keep it clean while you're driving, and everything's fine. But
yeah, it is. You have your dad joke.
I keep my dad jokes in my database. Yeah, anyone who knows this podcast this is not a surprise to you, but it is surprising to me though that such a small amount of slush and ice.
Yes, exactly. And here is the physics lesson, right? So as I pulled into the parking lot, it was too late to take a different parking lot, and I realized that the road is really, really very like lined with deep potholes. And then perhaps as I was driving back, I was probably driving too fast. And when the car started rocking, you see what happened. The car turned 90 degrees and I got stuck. It always felt like there's this like invisible force that took my car and turned it 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't get myself from this pickle because my front wheel was in one track that was deep in the snow, that was icy, and the same for the rear. So I was just perfectly stuck in this situation. So luckily, there were some nice people that helped me kind of figure it out. We tried to kind of push and pull, right? You see that we had a lot of manpower there. But at the end, the way how I had to do it is I had to resort to a traction device. So I had with me these socks, or it's like a traction device that you can use in state of Washington, like the specific ones you can use instead of chains. And because our cars cannot, like, you can install chains on the ID4, just regular ones. This was the best choice, and I carry them in the trunk. And so once I installed it, I was able to be pushed away from it. And then, of course, I drove very slowly, but you see that these holes were just so gnarly, and I've seen like a Toyota 4-wheel drive like being kind of stuck there. So I was not the only one. There was an Audi A7 in the parking lot, so I'd be really interested how they got out of there. Anyway, so be ready for and carry things that you think you might not need, but then when you're in a problem, that it will help you get from it. So this is this is how the EasySock look on the wheel, and this was after the 2 days. I left them on, so then I was able to very easily get from the parking lot, like without any slippage, without any problems.
Wow. Okay.
And so take a look at your Department of Transportation website, the state of Washington. They have dedicated page about what socks or what other traction devices are considered as chains, because in the snow passes here, there are chains required sometimes, and you can use this as an alternative device. I didn't have to use them because I have 4-wheel drive car, but as you've seen, I was not able to move, so I had to use them anyway. So your Department of Transportation may have a similar page, so I'll definitely urge you to check for something like that you might need sometime.
just as a point of reference, Jan, you said you had Michelin Cross Climate 2 tires on your car. So those are not winter tires, but they are 3-peak rated all-season tires. And so even with winter tires, in some states, it's still required to have something like this. So check your state's site for this.
Definitely.
No, this list is not going to be some people, I guess, in Montana are going to see this and say, well, no joke, guys.
So, right? but in some states, it may not be necessary, but I kind of find these useful. Nice grippy gloves that you can use to install your traction device, your snow socks or your chains. That helps a ton. If you are staying overnight, having an anti-freeze windshield washer fluid is helpful, because it not only it's working when you need to wipe your windshield, but it doesn't crack the reservoir and the pump. Snow removal brush. We were chatting about the Costco one, right? That we both have.
Yeah, it's a nice big brush with a nice big scraper on the other end, long enough to reach across your windshield. Indispensable.
Indispensable, 100%. This might be a little bit of a surprise. And I did not have a small bag of sand. And I learned my lesson that next time I will carry a small bag of sand, not as a weight to my car, but as if I would sprinkle a couple cups around each wheel as I was stuck. That would have helped me quickly get from the problem without using these socks potentially.
Okay. And the shovel is for you're stuck in the parking lot or stuck anywhere, but you brush your car off and all the snow falls down and now is trapping you in even more. So you need to be able to shovel out in front of your tires, or God forbid you run off the road.
Yes, and even on the side of the car, because you need to get into the car. You don't want to jump through the window. Yes. So shovel is good. And the 12-volt jump start, that may be surprising, but even EVs require 12-volt battery to be operational to start the car, because the high voltage contactors use the 12-volt battery and the 12-volt logic in the car to kind of connect the high voltage battery. And many of our batteries are over 3 years old, and they that's, I think, where they usually last. Like my lasted exactly 3 years. I got the better battery from VW, but I installed as US the AGM battery, which is the top of the line.
Yeah, you definitely get an AGM if you're going to replace your battery. The absorbed glass mat works much better in colder temperatures, and they last longer as well. But you will need to have the dealer code it for you, unless you have OBD11 or the D-First coder tool. It's strange that you need that for this, but you have to tell the car you have a new battery so it knows to treat it as new and how much energy is available. But also, the charging curve for AGM battery is different than the charging curve for a regular 12-volt battery. You don't want your car overcharging the battery and cooking it.
Or undercharging.
Or undercharging, yeah, for sure. So yeah, this is a really good list.
And we already have the video, because both of us have changed our battery. So please subscribe so you don't miss that next episode, one of the next episodes, how to change the 12-volt battery. It's an interesting process. It's not as easy as drop in, drop off as you think for other cars, because there's the strut bar that you need to remove. So it's a little bit more involving than normally it could be.
It's one of those fun things about owning a Volkswagen. You exactly. Get things that normally would be easy. So, all right. So this was a really great summary of what this has. So thanks, Jan, for telling us. We saw how the range was impacted by temperature and elevation. We saw that you shouldn't charge to 100% at your destination if it's at the top of the mountain. You should keep a little buffer there. We saw that your maximum power is lowered in freezing temperatures because they're trying to protect your battery from discharging too quickly. And we saw how your EV drives in winter conditions, and you weren't not able to defy the laws of physics. So you need to carry those winter essentials. Jan, thank you for making this sacrifice to teach us all some winter driving lessons.
Thank you for the great people who helped me get unstuck. Let's repeat the favor. Let's help others. I was able to do the same next day on a parking lot again. So let's be nice to each other. And thanks again for tuning in. And see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.